Hi, Abby. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So we're here today to talk about your new documentary, Earth's Greatest Enemy. And for any of our subscribers who don't know, Abby is an investigative journalist, host of the podcast, The Empire Files. I'm a huge fan. If you haven't listened already, I highly suggest you go and listen. And then obviously a documentarian. So one of the reasons we really wanted to bring you on is we've heard from our readers that they're interested in learning more about climate change, pollution. Um, obviously we focus on that at a hyperlocal level. Your project that you're working on is observing it on this massive global scale. So I really wanted to kick this off by asking you, you've been through your podcast really critical in your analysis, very outspoken about the US government, particularly its foreign policy. So what made you interested in exploring covering the military specifically through an environmental lens?
I was radicalized during the Iraq War to the nature and the machinery of U.S. empire, how it's not just, the government, it's actually a collusion of forces, including corporations and de facto the media, which essentially works as an arm of the state when it wants to manufacture consent for the foreign policy imposed on the rest of the world in our names. As an anti-imperialist journalist, I came into the field of journalism out of necessity because I just felt like there was this abysmal lack of my colleagues to cover war, empire, capitalism, and basically to hold power to account. When I joined forces with my husband and partner on the Empire Files, which is our investigative documentary series, Mike Preisner, who's also an Iraq War veteran, when we had our first child, we were kind of just overwhelmed with the cataclysmic changes on the horizon when it comes to climate change. And we were alarmed at the lack of reporting of the intersection of these two issues, war and empire, which is, as Americans, we are living in the belly of the beast of a global military empire. And we see the consequences of this in a myriad of ways. And the lack of reporting on that impact on climate change. And then when I just dug deeper and deeper and realized that the military is excluded from all these climate treaties, that militarism, I mean, it supersedes all of these basically any endangered habitat. I mean, the military can basically override any body. The EPA can go anywhere where it wants under the pretense of national security. So what started off as an entry point of just unpacking the climate emissions, which is gargantuan and kind of unquantifiable, turned into a huge, massive expose on the totality of military pollution. Every base of upwards to 1,000 bases has a story. It's the impact on the indigenous people who are living in the front lines communities, getting sacrificed with their health and environment, with the dumping and contamination to water. And this issue impacts every single person on the planet. That this is a global issue, and really we wanted to tie all these seemingly disparate issues together and kind of synthesize it all in one fell swoop.
Absolutely. And you touched on it already, but one of the things I kind of wanted to ask you more about is our role as the media in covering this crisis and the sheer scale of it. Why do you think so many US journalists are reticent to cover the military, let alone critique it?
The military is essentially a worshipped and revered institution in
Mhm.
this country. A lot of Americans have no idea that we live in a global military empire. When you say the word empire, they think you're talking about Star Wars. I mean, it's kind of silly, the inverted reality that Americans are so propagandized and
Yes.
so ignorant of the fact that they are essentially the world's policemen, this dictatorial regime. I mean, it is a global military dictatorship.
Mhm.
Look at the scale and the scope of the US military. So I think that when you just look at the way that corporate media functions, access journalism, a lot of people who just ascend to the ranks of these institutions because they're true believers in empire, they're true believers in the imperialist state, and they are part and parcel with it. You have major news bureaus sitting next to military brass at the Pentagon. I mean, these people hang out with each other at lunch. They probably go to each other's kids' birthday parties. It's just kind of like a surreal state of affairs that there's no reporters actually doing the work. I mean, I went on the Rimpack warship. I'm there confronting all these military generals, and they're flabbergasted because they're just not used to reporters doing their jobs.
Yeah, and you talk a bit about both in the documentary and this interview how the US really constructs this image of itself on the global stage as a protector. And so what in the process of filming, I know there was a lot you covered, but what was one of the starkest examples that you came across that kind of contradicts this image as a protector and rather exposes it as, life-threatening even?
Oh my God. I mean, I went into this, it's kind of like Palestine. It's like you think you know and you have no idea. You go to every story and it's 10 times worse than you think. And it just keeps getting worse. And the scale is just so massive. I mean, I went into this already knowing the kind of statistic that we all hear that the United States military is the largest polluter on an institutional level. And so I just thought, oh, wow, that does cover the totality, bigger than 140 countries. What does that really mean? And then you realize that's just the oil purchases on paper. That's just
Yeah.
270,000 barrels of oil a day. And you're like, hold on. What are we talking about when we extrapolate out and we're talking about all the emissions of just transporting all of the fuel, building all of the armaments, shipping all of them, upholding the proxy forces, the NATO machinery, all of it is so unbelievable and incomprehensible. I mean, just for example, learning about what they do to their own veterans. We know that Indigenous people have been sacrificed. It's a tale of the oldest time. They're the first frontline communities that are impacted by these contamination zones. But what I think a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of the victims of military pollution are their own service members. And they lie and they lie and they lie and they cover it up and they cover it up. And then when it's finally exposed, they deny the claims until these people are all dead,
Mhm.
whether we're talking about burn pits or Agent Orange exposure or Camp
That-
Lejeune, the story is all the same. And I think that above all is really the catalyst for people realizing that they're not a protector of life. They're
Mhm.
actually a sponsor of death and destruction. This is a for capitalist enterprise. It's a corporation that runs on death. That's what it is.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, you cover a lot of the military's role, obviously. That's so central to the piece itself. But on the other hand, you cover collective action and what everyday people not only need to know, but the ways that they can be involved to combat the rapid pollution and environmental degradation we're experiencing. What do you think specifically the American public needs to grapple with in regards to our military's role in all of this?
I think we need to zoom out and stop buying into the two-party system. There is a bipartisan consensus. Trump said it himself today. He said, yeah, I could go to Congress and ask for authorization about extrajudicially murdering fishermen off of the coast of Venezuela. He's like, but what would they even say? They're going to support me. Why wouldn't they? And
Yeah.
he's right. He's
Yep.
right. We're talking about just a complete consensus in Washington. That's why they call it the blob. It doesn't matter if the Democrats or Republicans. The fact that they're people who are posing, cosplaying as environmentalists, like
Mhm.
Jay Inslee, who is not addressing the elephant in the room, which is the cataclysmic environmental consequences of having a global military empire. So we have to start taking this issue seriously. We have to start confronting with peace and kindness environmental organizations about incorporating this into their agendas. We have to start joining forces with all of these activist organizations, whether you're a veteran, you're in the environmental movement, you're stop oil activists. All of these things are not, we're not disparate from each other. We are all part of the
Mhm.
same battle to save the planet and to make it a habitable future for our children. So I encourage everyone to get involved locally, whether or not you're getting involved with just covering these issues on the ground and reclaiming these narratives back from the corporate media, or getting involved with activist hubs surrounding you. The system wants us to be atomized and isolated. They don't want us to get out of our comfort zones and join forces. But the thing is, we don't really have a choice anymore. We don't have a
Mhm.
choice anymore. The time is pretty dire.
Yeah, it's right now. And that's why I think it's so crucial to promote the documentary you made. And I think it's already made an impact on so many of the people who have seen it. I actually took a little peek around Letterboxd last night to see what other viewers are thinking after they've gone into these screenings. And one named Emily wrote and touched a bit on what you just said. This documentary will make you uncomfortable and angry and distressed, and it should. There are millions of stories here that are connected, and our survival relies on us as humans making those connections so we can take collective action. So, if
Wow.
you were able to speak directly to viewers or people who would like to watch this, what do you want them to not just take from this film but to incorporate into their daily lives and larger worldview?
I'm an advocacy journalist. I
Hmm.
don't believe in this notion of unbiased
Yeah.
reporting. I advocate for causes and I advocate for people's lives. I advocate for life. And so this movie is just one small facet of the struggle. It's one contribution to guide the movement to help coalesce all of our struggles together. The time is now. It has never been more urgent. And I feel like just telling the truth has never been more controversial or dangerous. And that's really scary. But at the same time, I do have revolutionary optimism. I feel like we are at the precipice. I feel like the consciousness is exploding around the world, having this international framework and solidarity with our brothers and sisters, whether they're in Sudan, Congo, Palestine, of course, here in the belly of the beast. I think people go to earthsgreatestenemy.com. We could have taken this in film festivals. We could have tried to get this distributed, but the thing is, it's going to be a grassroots activist effort because it's so counterintuitive to the way capitalism works. It's not a docu-series. It's not a niche subject matter. It's the totality of this thing. And that's the thing. We need to really zoom out and look at the totality if we want to really have a fighting chance and look at the future with eyes wide open. Because the tech overlords in power are really trying to gaslight us. They're trying to pose a reality that's completely false. They're trying to tell us black is white and up is down. So we have to reclaim first a consensus of reality and then figure out how are we going to fight this together. And Earth's greatest enemy is just one tool in our arsenal. I hope everyone goes to the website. The first phase of the tour is going to be me going in person to universities. I want to go to every single city. Mike wants to go to every single military base. Let's do this. Let's do
Oh,
this.
wow.
Movement. This is a movement, and we need everyone to be all hands on deck.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a lot of connections at college campuses in LA, so I'd love to try and get you
Yeah.
out here to do that. But one thing before I let you go that I
Yeah.
want to make sure to draw a connection to, you've brought up Palestine several times, along with your fabulous earrings you've got on today.
Thank you.
Palestine is obviously, to anyone who has followed your career, so central to your work and the stories and issues you choose to uplift with your advocacy journalism platform. Is there some sort of through line between your first documentary, which is The Empire Files, Gaza Fights for Freedom, and Earth's Greatest Enemy, especially in light of the genocide in Gaza?
I think just the ecological devastation of war in general and the ecocidal destruction is something that is so untold, and of course, kind of a far thing from our minds because of just the cataclysmic effect on human beings.
Mhm.
But I think this will be generational devastation and pollution that is going to affect not just Israelis, but the entire planet. And yes, I mean, the through line is so obvious. I mean, working on this film, looking back on it now and rewatching it with the
Mhm.
backdrop of the Gaza genocide makes it so much more devastating.
Mhm.
Every Iraqi children, every child's eyes. That's my Palestinian child. That's my Palestinian family. And it's so much more horrific, I guess, just to see what we've allowed, how much worse it's gotten, how now we have a
Mhm.
person in power that's saying that climate change is the biggest hoax. I mean, the biggest hoax the oil companies ever pulled was convincing us it was a globalist plot and somehow making that a partisan issue. So we're talking about the future of humanity. We're talking about the future of our planet. This isn't partisan, but it's so sad that it's become that way. But Gaza is everything. Gaza is not only an experiment, um,
Mhm.
by the super rich as a threat against humanity. It's so much more. It's also the cornerstone of our collective liberation. It's everything. It's everything. And I think it signals so much of what's possible and what's also lost on the global stage. So we have to keep having Gaza in our heart and keep fighting for our Palestinian brothers and sisters.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I wish I could say that um, watching this climate crisis unfold across the globe struck Americans more in the heart and that we carried more responsibility for the pollution that our military is causing. And I just urge people to pay attention to the climate crisis that's already unfolding in our country. We have a lot of Indigenous Alaskans being flooded out of their town and their houses washed away that we're not seeing being covered by mainstream media. We had, absolutely devastating wildfires here in Los Angeles that uprooted entire portions of the city and burnt them to the ground. So I think that your documentary comes at an incredibly vital time where we all need to start having more internal reflection and making those choices. So, do you have for anyone who watches it or views this mini interview with you and wants to get involved right away, are there specific organizations or actions that you recommend that they take in order to, start getting involved?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many great organizations. Another amazing thing about this tour is bringing together local sponsors in every city that we're going to. So I encourage, people to come show up at these screenings, and bring me there and get involved with the local organizations that are coming to the screenings themselves. And a lot of these organizations have local coalitions and campaigns because it really does seem totally insurmountable and very existential. And we're talking about crises that are, in fact, very existential and global. Climate change, imperialism, capitalism, it seems very crazy. We're all struggling, with rent and debt and all of that. I totally get it. But the thing is, there are local initiatives, local campaigns that you can fight and win where you are, and there are people around you that are like-minded. And I think that just, again, it just takes stepping one foot out and getting
Mhm.
involved, and you will not regret it. But I think, it's now or never. It really is. It is
Yeah.
now or never, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm super optimistic about where we can take this, and just looking at the rest of the world, they are ready. It's time for us to step up to the plate. Join the movement. EarthsGreatestEnemy.com. Thank you so much, Morgan. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much, Abby.